So, as you can see, this is a Destiny video, and yes, I'm very aware that the discussion of Destiny in MLP is pretty much long dead. But I only started making videos recently, so I thought I might as well throw in my 2 cents, just for the record. I'll say up front that I don't like the idea of a determinist-like force of Destiny in MLP. It's not something I really like, not something I really endorse. However, at the same time, this is not a disproof video. If you want a disproof of a sort of determinist Destiny system, go to Brony Curious. If you want an endorsement of this, try DigiBrony. What this video will do is explore some negative ramifications that would be there if such a system was in place. And these points are points that I do not believe have been covered by other Bronies, or Brony analysts, at least to memory. First we have the villains. There was Nightmare Moon, originally Luna, who turned into Nightmare Moon out of jealousy, at least in the show. I have not read the comics. And then threatened Equestria with Eternal Night. Next was Discord, an embodiment of disharmony, successfully breaking the friendship of the main 6, and turning Ponyville into the chaos capital of the world, albeit briefly. Later we had Chrysalis, who managed to successfully invade Canterlot, fool everyone, and even defeat Celestia. And last was Sombra, who just ruled the Crystal Empire with an iron fist. We don't know much beyond that. But let's break it down and look at it through the lens of Destiny. If this is done, then their becoming villains was something completely beyond their control. Now let's look at the ramifications of this. Luna would have been predestined to become Nightmare Moon via jealousy, regardless of anything she did. Discord, in Keep Calm Flutteron, stated that he never had a friend before, giving out the strong implication that he was never offered friendship, considering how he took Fluttershy's invitation, and that he was willing to stop his antics for her. So it implies that no one offered, and it shows that he isn't an irredeemable monster, but no one put their foot forward, and no one could. He was preordained to play his part. Chrysalis and the Changelings may be more unique in this sense. Yes, they were preordained like the other examples of villainy on the list, but Changelings appear to only be capable of feeding on emotions, which means that every encounter with one is a sadist choice. Either you deny its food and it starves, or you let it feed on you for what is most likely its benefit and your expense. The invasion of Canterlot itself could have been seen as a drastic measure taken because no one just lets them do it. Hunger pains kept growing and they went with a full-on invasion. As for the attitude of Chrysalis, well, if hostile takeover is the only thing that ends up working and your prosperity depends on it, then who can blame her? It seems to me that whatever made them in a way that everyone else would have to perceive them as evil, and they have to do it for survival. Last is Sombra, and the only thing I can really say here is that he was preordained, because, again, we don't know enough to comment further. Now look at this list again, and look at the fates of most of these villains. The only one immediately saved was Luna, and that was after 1,000 years imprisonment. Discord spent 1,000 years as a stone statue, and more disturbingly, he seemed pretty aware of it. Like, all of it. Not that it seems to have taken a toll on his sanity, but it does not seem pleasant. Granted, he was redeemed, though it was after getting stoned twice. The Changelings were blown sky high, possibly still starving, and sent to who knows where. And then Sombra, being literally turned into shadow, was completely decimated. Now remember that we were talking about an Equestria with a Destiny system in place, so that means they all got extreme punishments for things that were totally beyond their control. Our heroines get the downside that you can't really feel proud for any of their accomplishments. Sure, it's cool to see them succeed, but it doesn't really mean much because it was predestined to happen. It was a foregone conclusion. Brony Curious made a similar point in a past video. But then you also have to remember the villains, who stand to gain nothing and possibly lose everything from this system, would only exist for the main 6 to gain all the glory as well as prove that they're being heroic, among other possible positive things. However, the best example of this is probably Trixie, even though she was only a minor villain of the series. In Ghostbusters, she is hot-headed and proud, compared to Twilight, who is more humble and reserved. Guess what the show portrayed is better, by the way. Anyway, her possessions are completely destroyed through no fault of her own, and then to add insult to injury, Snips and Snails, who are the ones who actually pissed off the Ursa, resulting in everything I just mentioned, essentially got off easy. Also notice how, in that episode, Trixie shows up all of Twilight's friends with stage magic. But then Twilight shows up Trixie and defeats the Ursa with standard magic, something Trixie failed to do. But then later in Magic Duel, Trixie gets the Alicorn Amulet to beat Twilight with standard magic, and in that regard succeeds. But then Twilight beats her with stage magic. My problem here is that it's heavily implied, if not outright stated, that Trixie's talent is stage magic. Wouldn't it stand to reason that she would recognize it when someone was using it against her? That's how Twilight's talent works, having mastered spells that have been used on her once, like teleportation, or by mere description or vague memory or even idea of how they should work, like Rarity's gem-finding spell. I bring this up because it always seems like the cards are stacked against Trixie. Now, in Magic Duel, one could certainly argue that the Alicorn Amulet screwed with her judgment, to the point where she couldn't realize the sleight-of-hand trickery that was being pulled on her. But either way, with Destiny, it's pointless no matter what the case actually was. The reason is that in such a system, she is restricted to being inferior to Twilight and will never be able to surpass Twilight no matter how hard she works, because that is how it is written in the grand plan. But I prefer to think that the system was not there and that Trixie would be naturally better at something than Twilight, or better at something because she worked hard, not Twilight's better at everything because Destiny says so. Anyway, that is my 2 cents on this probably long dead issue. At the risk of people having already said what they wanted to say back when it was more relevant, or getting no replies at all, what do you guys think?